On May 25th, 2020, in the city of Minneapolis, police had responded to a call about George Floyd giving them a fake bill. What we initially see is bystander footage that had shown multiple police officers restraining George Floyd. While Floyd had made multiple verbal attempts to tell the officers he had trouble breathing,
Please, I can't breathe. Please.
these comments, however, were dismissed by Officer Chauvin, with him either saying in response, "Then stop talking, stop yelling, it takes a heck of a lot of oxygen to talk," or "Take a heck of a lot of oxygen to say that." We then see Floyd slowly go non-responsive as the crowd yells for the officers to get off his neck and to check Floyd's pulse,
Bro, are you serious? You gonna just let him get there with that on his neck, bro?
with it later being confirmed by the hospital that Floyd had died. We later get info that the officers involved in the death of Floyd are charged with multiple counts of murder and a manslaughter charge. I take my focus away from the incident and look towards the view of actual justice warriors' thoughts on the matter. Sean has 5 videos covering the incident of Floyd and the charging of the officers involved. Sean's responses are dismissive towards the likelihood of the officers being convicted of multiple charges. This video is an examination to see whether Sean's analysis of the case is correct. However, instead of making one video covering all of his takes, I'll be splitting his videos into 3 parts. Initial coverage, looking at the 2 responses that are shy over a month to Floyd's death. Pre-trial coverage, this only looks at one video that was produced half a year later from his second. And Sean's verdict coverage, looking at his pre- and post-analysis over Chauvin's conviction. The motive behind this separation is time. Criticism is only going to be based on information that was known during or before his video releases. His first 2 videos were made on July 25th and August 8th, approximately a 2-week difference. The reason not to separate these 2 videos into 2 different videos is similarity. 2 videos only differentiate on one new piece of information, and there isn't any new information outside of his own coverage. Starting off, in both of his videos, he downplays the findings of either Baker or Baden.
First and foremost, there were only 2 autopsies conducted on George Floyd. There was the autopsy conducted by the state of Minnesota, which deemed that the officer was partially responsible, as well as drugs in Floyd's system that contributed to his death. Then there was the autopsy done by the family's coroner, somebody they were clearly intending to restrain this man, not to kill him. Furthermore, we have no scientific evidence whatsoever that the knee on the neck was the primary cause of death of George Floyd. The best we have in terms of scientific analysis is the state autopsy report, which only puts the knee on the neck as a contributing factor to George Floyd's death. Remember, the state's analysis says clearly that Floyd had a lethal dose of fentanyl and methamphetamine in his system at the time that he died.
However, the state report does not list the knee on the neck as a contributing factor. They list the restraint as the cause of death. They then separately write that the drugs in Floyd's system were also significant conditions. Sean instead relays that drugs and the restraint are both contributing factors, placing them on the same level, as to say that it was just as possible, if not more so, that he died from drugs, rather than acknowledging what the Hennepin County actually reported, that Floyd's death was a homicide and the police restraint had caused Floyd's death.
Scene while the pressure is being applied, or when, as in this instance, it is captured on video.
That's right, the guy who did the second autopsy, which was wrongly labeled the independent autopsy, when in reality it's the family's autopsy that they will be presenting at a civil case in the future after the whole trial thing is resolved. Even that guy says that he didn't see any evidence of asphyxiation at autopsy. He based his findings on the video, which means there's no evidence of asphyxiation at autopsy, and you or I can look at the video and guess what the cause of death is. So what he'll be testifying to, even in the civil case, is that he didn't see evidence of what he claims the cause of death is at autopsy, and you should just take his word for it.
Sean's attack on Baden seemed even more perplexing. While his criticism is fair that Baden isn't a real independent source, as he is hired by the family, the response that Baden's opinion should be dismissed because he based some of his review on the video, as Baden expresses that the only signs of asphyxiation are best captured by the video, then to go forward and to suggest that a medical professional's perception of a video is just that of equivalent to a layman's perception, it makes it look like that Sean wants to take away any argument for asphyxiation, even if he has to make a horrible argument to get there. Moving on to his discussion of the murder charges, Sean argues similarly in both of his videos and in a bonus live stream in which he argues that Chauvin will be found of second-degree murder.
Second-degree murder, based on the transcripts, no way. There is no way that there was any intent to kill Floyd on behalf of Chauvin. And while second-degree murder does have certain instances where intent is not required, they're very specific instances, like if you kill somebody who has a restraining order against you, or if you kill somebody in a drive-by shooting that you didn't intend to kill, because drive-by shootings are ridiculously dangerous. They do not apply in any way, shape, or form to what Chauvin did here in this situation.
You know, people misread this all the time because they don't understand that you should read the law that's from the state that you're prosecuting them in, the most obvious thing in the world. The second-degree murder charge requires intent. It requires intent to have, we're not done with the video. It requires intent to kill, except for very specific instances where it doesn't require intent. So if you do a drive-by in Minnesota and you shoot a person you didn't intend to kill, that's still second-degree murder. If you assault somebody that you have a restraining order against and you beat them in such a way that they die, that's second-degree murder, whether you intended to or not. If you're committing a violent other type of crime of a sexual nature and the person dies during the course of that, whether you intended to or not, that's a second-degree murder conviction, depending on how severe that sexual assault is. So none of the exemptions to the intent provision apply here. 0% of them. They're trying to restrain him. So second-degree murder is a bogus upcharge. Third degree, we could have a conversation about it later, and we will.
Sean is assuming that the prosecution isn't charging Chauvin with intentional second-degree murder because he believes that the intentional section isn't applicable. However, according to the amendment complaint, it states that Chauvin is being charged with unintentional second-degree murder, namely assault in the third degree. The reason this contradicts with Sean's statement is, firstly, Sean never checks to see whether Sean is being charged with an intentional or unintentional second-degree murder. Secondly, Sean misreads Minnesota's second-degree murder statute. More concisely, he misreads subsection 1 of unintentional murders. The only way for him to include crimes involving sexual conduct and drive-by shootings as the only possible unintentional felonies is that he's misreading the words other than to mean including, rather than excluding these acts. Drive-by shootings don't fall under unintentional murder. They literally fall under the first section of second-degree murder and are considered to be intentional. Or murders involving sexual conduct also don't fall under second-degree unintentional murder because they already fall under a section, first-degree murder. Sean misreads the words other than as to mean only including, the literal opposite of what they mean. And it's clear he doesn't know what section Chauvin is being charged under, so what does he do? He takes a leap and makes the assumption that Chauvin is being charged with intentional murder. The critical flaw of assuming what Chauvin is being charged for or for why causes Sean's criticism against these charges to ring hollow, because he doesn't know what he's being charged for, and more critically, why he's being charged. Any criticism against the charges is going to be making a lot of assumptions with information that wasn't available. When Sean had released the 2 videos, all we had to work off with was 2 things. The charges, which it was clear that Sean didn't understand nor didn't know what Chauvin was being charged with, and the video of Floyd. That's it. When did we get the prosecution's explanation for the charges? On September 18th, well over a month since Sean put out his second video. The importance of knowing why someone is being charged is much more valuable than knowing what someone is being charged with, as it allows you to test if their charges are correct. This video is a bit shorter than the others, but this is because the major issue with his videos is his attempt to get to the top of this incident when the foundations were just being put up. There was very little information for anyone to work with. My second response regarding his third video might be a bit longer, since by the time he makes that video, a treasure trove of information had been released.